Today we're doing the 8th set of notes, and we are again solving polynomials, but now we're going to be up to higher powers. So like for example, the first one is up to the 5th power. But we're going to use the graph to help us obtain some of our answers to make these problems a little bit easier. So notice for letter A, we're to the 5th power, and next to it you have a picture provided. So we know that if it's to the 5th power, that we are supposed to get 5 answers. So I'm supposed to have 5 answers. And of those 5 answers, you should be able to look at the graph and tell me what my real solutions are. So notice it crosses the graph right here, there, and there. And those values would be a -2, and let me erase it so we can see a little bit better. So a -2, a +1, and a +2. And again, we got them from where it's crossing the x-axis. What we don't know is the other 2 values, but what we do know is that if I have 5 answers, 3 are real, I definitely need to get 2 complex solutions, but I want you to actually obtain those. So what we're going to do is similar to what we did yesterday, is we're going to use the fact that I know some of these zeros are the answers to solve the problem and bring it down to lower powers. So we are going to use one of the zeros first, so I'm just going to pick -2 to start with. You could start with 1, you could start with 2, you could use any of them for all that it matters. You just need to pick one of them, and we're going to start this whole process of synthetic. So I list my coefficients. Don't write extremely large in this section because this example has a lot of steps to it, not that it's difficult, but don't write too large. So I drop my 1, -2 times 1 is -2. Now I add, and we get -3. -2 times -3 is a +6. When I add, I get +3. When we multiply -6, add, we get -3. Multiply, we get a +6. Add, we get +2. -2 times 2 is a -4, and we have no remainder. So by doing this, I was able to go from the 5th power down to the 4th power. So technically now I'm at an x to the 4th minus 3x cubed plus 3x squared minus 3x plus 2. And now what we're going to do is synthetic again, but now I need to pick a different zero. So I've done synthetic with a -2, so -2 is out of the running. So now we're going to do synthetic with a different value. So I'll do synthetic with the 1 next. So we list our coefficients. So I'm doing it with a 1. We list our coefficients. Notice I'm not going back to the original coefficients. I'm using the new ones because the goal is to bump us down a degree each time. So I drop my 1. 1 times 1 is 1. I add, we get -2. 1 times -2 is -2. Add, we get 1. 1 times 1 is 1. -3 plus 1 is a -2. Multiply, and again we get no remainder. So now I am down in the 3rd power. So I'm now down to an x cubed minus 2x squared plus x minus 2. So we're going to do synthetic again, now using the 3rd real answer, which was a +2. Okay, so again, doing synthetic with a +2, I have a 1, -2, 1, and a -2. So I drop my 1, 2 times 1 is 2. We add, we get 0. 2 times 0 is 0. 1 plus 0 is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. No remainder. So I've gone from the 5th power all the way down to the 3rd. By doing this next step of synthetic, now I'm down to the 2nd power. So now I'm down to an x squared plus 1. And the whole purpose of doing synthetic multiple times is to get us down to the 2nd power. Once you're in the 2nd power, we can always use quadratic or check to see if it's factorable to solve. This one we don't necessarily need quadratic formula for it because there's no b term, so I'm just going to set it equal to 0, and I need to get x by itself, so I subtract 1. X squared equals -1. Take the square root, so x equals plus or minus I. So my 5 total answers were the -2, 1, and 2. Those were the three positive answers that were essentially given to you. And the other two answers that we found was a positive I and a negative I. So there's my two complex or imaginary solutions. So that is example A. Example B is a little bit easier in the fact that when I look at the problem, first thing you should notice that all the terms are on different sides. So I need to get all my terms on one side. So I need to subtract my 13x squared, and I'll be adding this 10x over. So standard form, I would have x to the 4th plus 2x cubed minus 13x squared plus 10x equals 0. Now, when I look at this, we should get 4 answers. And we know we get 4 answers because of the exponent up, the highest exponent is 4. When I look at the graph, you should notice that my function is crossing the x-axis 4 times. So since I can look at this picture and clearly see what my 4 answers are, I don't really need to do much work for this problem necessarily. So looking at the picture, right here is one solution, and that is a 1, 2, 3, 4, -5. The next solution we can figure out is a 0, 1, and a 2. So the reason I don't need to do synthetic for this problem is I can look at it and say, okay, well, here is my 4 answers. I'm only supposed to get a total of 4, so that is my final answer. So not every problem requires a lot of work. You just need to know how to interpret the graph with its corresponding equation. So that's all for today. We'll pick up with this tomorrow.